Okay, I think we can begin. Just a few housekeeping. So in terms of the session will be recorded. And also, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, can I please request everyone just to turn off their cameras and also to turn off their microphones as well. And we will begin now. So welcome everyone to the Youth Lead Innovation Festival on Youth Reaching the Stars. Thank you once again for connecting. So in terms of this session, like I mentioned, the session will be recorded and will be shared on all UN platforms itself. Before we begin, I wanted to just give you a little bit of context to the event and a little bit of the structure and organization of it. So the session itself is the spotlight session by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. The way we will proceed today is by having our distinguished panelists first introduce themselves, then talk about their backgrounds, experiences, talk about their journey, how they have managed to get where they are today, their obstacles, difficulties, and also lessons learned. After that, we will be moving to an open discussion and about potential recommendations, which will be for policymakers, but also for the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. So with that, we shall begin. So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I know everyone's joining from different places, different time zones. It is great pleasure. It is my great pleasure, actually, that we are today hosting the Youth Lead Innovation Festival in celebration of the International Youth Day. So the International Youth Day is actually a celebration of innovative youth-led solutions for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as to address the COVID-19 pandemic recovery. The Youth Lead Innovation Festival aligns perfectly in terms of the strategic and its timely approach to deliver our will to a solutions-oriented future for youth-led actions. So the aim of this festival itself is to bring together young innovators, solution makers in addressing the growth of digital technology and innovation. Even in 2020, we do have to recognize that many young innovators are still vulnerable and marginalized, hence someone left behind. Today, the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs is providing an opportunity for this spotlight session in terms of youth reaching the stars. This will be highlighted by the incredible work of young people within the space sector itself. The space sector is continuously playing an important role within our society, whether it is climate action. More than half of the essential climate variables depend on space assets, or whether it is the COVID-19 recovery, where satellite-based communications have enabled us to continue working, connecting with each other remotely, or even monitoring or slowing the spread of the virus. So within all these segments, the participation of youth have been crucial. Hence, today, we'll be hearing some of the stories of some astonishing young individuals from the sector. Without any further delay, we will begin the Space Youth Lead Innovation Festival Spotlight session. So let me begin by introducing our speakers and thank them for their participation in this session. Our panelists for today are Karina, Berber, Bruno, the winner of the Space for Youth competition, Moacir, Foncesca, the winner of the Drop Tower Experiment Series and KiboCUBE, Hannah Ritchie from our Space for Water Portal team, Alice Rickenberg from our UN Spider team. I would like to now hear from our panelists, and if I may ask them to please turn on their cameras and please introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their background. So we'll begin with Karina, and then we'll move on to the different speakers along the way. So if I may ask Karina to please give a small introduction. I believe Karina will be presenting to us as well a few slides. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you very much, Hansley. Well, good morning or good afternoon for you all. And well, I will start sharing my screen, but first of all, I would like to thank you for Youth Lead for this invitation. It's an honor to be here with you all and share this amazing experience that is be one of the winners of Space for Youth. So let me share here the screen, and if you already see here, Can you see my screen? And can you hear me well? Everything's okay?
Everything's good.
Okay, so again, thank you very much for this invitation. It's an honor to be here. And so to start our conversation, to all know, all of you know me better, I received some very interesting questions and points to share with you. And the first question that I received were asking me who I am. And you know, this kind of question can be a very philosophical question. And we can go far thinking in the answer, but I decided to start our conversation talking about desires. And I chose to talk about desires because human beings are on a complex amount of them. And what we want, because what we want for our lives, right? What we want for our societies, environments, and so on. So I believe that an important desire that had led me to where I am today, and I believe that is the same for many people here, is the desire of discovering. So discovering, for example, how nature works was always amazing for me, and that's why I have always been passionate about astronomy, geography, geology, and many other natural sciences. But as I grew up, I started to have interests in social areas and mainly how the dynamic between societies and environments works. So all of this path of understanding what I am observing, studying, analyzing, understanding mainly how nature works, what are the trade-offs, and how I can find a solution for a problem that I want to solve, guided me to the geoscience field, where I recognize a place to connect all of these points and these aspects. So I became a geographer. I have a bachelor degree in geography, and now I'm studying my master's degree in demography and population studies. And as a result of all this academic and professional path, I have been working in projects always related to the management of natural resources, energy, sustainability, sustainable development. And currently, I am developing my activities related to the land use and cover of Brazilian biomes. And in all my work and studies, were always using space technologies and data for developing their issues or goals. And so from understanding the world as a huge place where all things are related to one another, I plan to use space technologies and data for integrating social, demographic, and economic areas with environmental area. So summing up all of these topics that I said, I can say that I am also a map maker, and I think it is amazing to communicate through different realities of our world through maps. So I believe this is my first introduction for you. And the other interesting question that I received was about what I wanted to be when I was a kid. And the answer for this is that I wanted to be a writer. Here on the slide, you are seeing some of my favorite writers. And I believe that I wanted to be a writer because writers are great observers of human condition and human relations, nature, and all that surround us. So they usually like and want to share these stories, and they are very authentic, autonomous people who have their own thoughts and understanding of the world and propose them for everyone. But if you ask me, did you succeed in being a writer? The answer is no. I am 30 years old now. And when I was a kid, being a writer seemed to be more a man's job than a woman. And I believe that I thought in that way because female writers were not so mentioned as today they are. And of course, everybody said that it's not a successful career. Well, this woman on the slide here say the opposite, right? But besides this, time and knowledge helped me to see that I can do what I want to do. And was in the science field that I found these aspects that are extremely valuable for me. So observation, sharings, autonomy. And in the science field, I need to get out of my comfort zone to make questions, and I need to read and write a lot, and I love this. And I am in constant learning mode and searching for solutions to take actions in challenges that I want to face. And also another important point in science field is that I am allowed to connect with different people and different knowledge. And this, for example, was Space for Youth, a competition brought to me, an amazing connections and learnings. So this is really important. And I brought also some points about my current goals and also the difficulties that women face in science, technology, engineering, and mathematical fields. And I will start talking about my main goal, which is promote autonomy and integration between environmental, scientific, and social spheres. And I plan to do this using bounding tools such as space technologies to show that these spheres that seems to be separated, in fact, they are intrinsically correlated, connected. And the many challenges that we face today, such as the climate change, promote sustainable agricultural production or urban planning, all of this can be thought together. And we can search for solutions that reinforce the synergy between those spheres. And that's why we must think in the future to promote societies and environments that future generations will be felt safe to be in. So if I can give you all an important recommendation is putting space scientists and policymakers to work together. It's necessary to build a strong network between universities and governments, mainly in developing countries. And we must talk about this issue in international arenas, and ask what are the developing countries that use science to make public policies. So this is a very important point. And well, about the difficulties of being a woman in these areas, I believe that I have faced the problem of not being heard. And many times women are not heard. Their opinions and also their research or work are not read or promoted. But I must recognize that I have a point of privilege, that is being a white woman, so I do not face racism, for example. But besides being a woman in the science field in a patriarch society, I also have the problem of barriers between science field. I want to be in the interdisciplinary area, and this is very hard in science because scientists are very attached to the models claimed by their fields, but the world is not separated in boxes. But this is also a challenge. And also I have, of course, my vulnerabilities, like thinking that I cannot do something because it's not my knowledge area, or sometimes I have doubts if I can learn everything that I want to learn. And that is mainly because I need to observe and think and understand. So it's a process and take time. And most of scientists are always fighting against the time because we need this process of analyzing and figuring out how things work. But our society is faster than ever, so we have this challenge too. And well, finally, these points and aspects that I brought here today is because I believe that we must go beyond to discover solutions for our environmental and social crises that we are facing today, many of them. But the good news is that when we are talking about or facing huge challenges and make revolutions or something like this, we can count with women because we know that women already know to do that. So I believe this is the message. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you for sharing your journey and experience with us. It's much appreciated. I was very intrigued to hear that, first of all, you wanted to be a writer and then you moved away from the writing. I'm guessing with the scientific journey that you
Yes.
had. Of course, there's been many chances of course, writing many scientific papers as well.
Yes.
But I hope you're still keeping up with the writing as well. But it was very intriguing to just hear about your experience, in terms of your journey coming up and the barriers as well, being a woman in this STEM education itself, or the STEM background as well. So it was really interesting to hear about that. I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later in more detail as well. But thank you so much for sharing this with us already. I just want to remind everyone, we do have our chat section. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment or pose any questions for our panelists. We will have an open discussion after that. So we will have a chance to pick out a few questions that we can address after that. So now moving on to our next panelist, we have Moacir, who is the winner of our DropTES experiment series and KiboCUBE. So over to you, Moacir.
Thank you so much, Hansley. I'm going to share my screen. I would appreciate your confirmation just to see if we got this working. Okay. Hansley, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen, and I can see now you're presenting as well. So that's all good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Moacir Foncesca. You can call me Moa. That's much easier for everyone in the world. And I appreciate your time here. First of all, happy International Youth Day for all of the youth out there, and also for not the so young ones that still have a youngster heart. So that's important as well. And thank you as well, UNOOSA, for creating this spotlight session so that we can share a little bit of our experiences in the space field and our careers as well, and have this hopefully enriching discussion throughout the session. So my name is Moacir, and I just happened to be born a citizen of Brazil and Costa Rica, but I think that's too arbitrary to be important. So let's just, for the sake of simplicity, say I'm just an Earthling, just like everyone else here in this room. And on the technical aspect, I majored in mechanical engineering, and I minored in electrical engineering. These are my two main fields of study currently. And I'm currently working in a couple of projects that I'm a volunteer. This one specifically, it's Moacir project, and Moacir project aims to put the first Honduran satellite in space. And it's a project that's being developed through a collaboration of 3 Central American countries. It is Honduras, Costa Rica, and Guatemala collaborating for the first time on a huge and I would say really important project for the region. And also I'm working currently on co-funding the Central American Aerospace Network as an effort to continue these organic network of enthusiasts and people interested in the space sector in Central America. So we want to leverage the understanding, the knowledge, everything we have learned from the Moacir project, and to continue creating future projects for the region and working together. What else about me? Well, I consider myself someone intellectually curious. I really enjoy reading in a diversity of topics. I like also kind of the generalist approach. I don't go too deep focused and don't hyper specialize. I like to see the big picture and understanding how things and parts interconnect among themselves. And I'm a very purpose-driven person. So I need to really understand the why behind an action for that to become important to me. And that drives me to action. And that's a big motor in my life, I would say. And what else? Not so technical stuff. I like reading, calisthenics, swimming, surfing, basketball. So if either of you is interested in either of these topics, I'll be happy to talk about it as well. So on a different topic, and one of the questions we were asked is, what did we want to become as a kid? And definitely an astronaut. I mean, I think who in this room does not want to become an astronaut? So that's part of the big goal. The other question we got asked is, have you accomplished that yet? Well, not yet. Maybe we're on the way there. But there are also a diversity of branches that have been created as a potential career purpose as you go and discover and study more in life. So this is a little bit of my career story that I'll be showing here, just as a way of showing a little bit of the path I've taken so far, and also focusing on the challenges and the opportunities that have appeared along the way. So it all started looking up back in 2001 through a telescope, gazing at Saturn for the first time. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, something that would appear to be just from textbooks. Looking at a planet, I was actually seeing it with my own eyes, and that really changed it all. It got me into thinking, how do we actually get there? How is it possible that such a strange and different world exists outside of this planet? And how do we go out there and actually work on it and go there and discover it? So this initiated a huge passion. And then in university, I joined a emerging rocketry group, through which we had some activities. We developed scaled rockets and we launched them. And we had a little bit of workshops on rocketry and so on. Then later on, I worked on volcanic research using unmanned aerial vehicles. We did some research alongside JPL and NASA, studying the volcanic fumes coming out of the active volcanoes here in Costa Rica, studying specifically the gaseous composition of these fumes. Later on, UNOOSA had a workshop here in Costa Rica, which I was part of. It was a great opportunity to interconnect with astronauts and with space professionals. Later on, as well, I was part of the DropTES series of experiments. I was fortunate enough to win this competition back in 2016 and to perform a microgravity research in Germany. Then some opportunities in congresses, such as the International Astronautical Congress. Then I was part of the International Space University Space Studies program in 2018. Later, a second International Astronautical Congress in Washington. Now I'm currently working on the satellite project that I mentioned previously. This is part of the UNOOSA KiboCUBE as well, competition that our project was awarded. And we're going to be launching the satellite to the International Space Station, hopefully in 2022 or 2023. And currently, I'm co-founding the Central American Aerospace Network, which I mentioned aims to be a network of professionals in the region that continues working on projects in the aerospace field here in Central America. And yeah, up to date, I'm still looking up metaphorically and literally through a telescope I purchased. So this is a little bit of my short career path. But most importantly, I think one of the questions is, what did help? And if you are observant enough, you might have noticed UNOOSA comes up 3 times here in this short slide. And that's definitely because something that has helped in the development of my career and personal experience is the vision of those who believe in the democratization of space. And that's definitely UNOOSA's vision, and the opportunities that UNOOSA has brought to the world are a big trigger of development in our personal careers, even though we're not spacefaring countries. Also, what helped? Well, curiosity and seeking opportunities with international organizations, learning from the experience of others, and opening up to people and not being afraid to ask for help. That's definitely a big driver. Some challenges along the way. I was born in a country with pretty much no pre-existing space ecosystem. So you kind of have to figure it out, how to go about it, either internationally or to create new things nationally. And some cultural barriers as well. People here are not born with the mindset that space exploration is a thing we can actually accomplish from within the country's borders. And this is something we have to deal with, as well as with some external questioning that comes, I would say, as a result of the cultural barriers, which may sometimes lead to self-doubt and asking yourself, am I actually in the right path? Am I actually doing the right thing currently? So this is the short intro, and hopefully we can bring it up for discussion later on, Hansley.
Thank you, Ma. This is very impressive, and you could really tell that you've been very active since you started. In terms of wanting to be an astronaut, you've really really taken the challenge of pushing for that with all these initiatives. But I'm glad to hear that UNOOSA is helping as well with these opportunities for non-spacefaring countries itself, and I guess our Space for All initiative has really helped as well. So it's really nice to hear about your journey, and of course we'll get to talk about it a little bit more about in our open discussion. Then moving on, we'll move to Hannah. Hannah is from our Space for Water portal team, and Hannah, you could please share your screen as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Hansley. Can you see that?
I can see it, yes.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you, Hansley, and thank you to UNOOSA for the opportunity. Good morning and good afternoon, and thank you for sharing your time with us today. So I'm Hannah, like Hansley said. I'm a PhD student at Cranfield University studying WASH, so water, sanitation and hygiene in lower middle income countries. So I began that in 2019. My plan was never to do a PhD, but I've always been very interested in water and development, and the opportunity came up, so I seized that opportunity. I'm specifically researching rural water security in drylands, looking at sand dams, which are a type of rainwater harvesting technique. And I'm hoping to use space technologies using remote sensing to look at the interaction between sand dams and the underlying aquifers. My background is mainly in geology, so I studied that at Exeter University, and I've worked in environmental engineering for a year. And I just finished an internship with UNOOSA Space for Water. So during those 6 months, I was working on content for the Space for Water portal and researching and writing some articles. So that was an amazing experience. Before that, I didn't have a lot of experience in space technologies, only from my knowledge from geology. But I learned so much about the application of space technologies for water. I think every day it kind of blew my mind just how much space technologies can do. And then outside of working, I really love to run, and I also love reading very widely, and cooking, and also like to climb. So that's a bit of a brief introduction about myself. In terms of what I wanted to be growing up, I never had a massively standout career goal, but I remember the very first thing that I wanted to do as a child was to be a lollipop lady. They were always really nice. And then as a teenager, I wanted a caring job, and I was thinking maybe going into nursing or medicine. Then I decided I didn't really like illness too much, so that wouldn't have been so great. So I looked at other caring jobs like speech therapy, occupational therapy. But then as soon as I studied geology for an A-level, I just really loved that. I loved the outdoors and everything that went with it. So that's when I decided that I wanted to study that at university. I knew I didn't really want to go down a traditional geology route, so not mining or oil and gas. And I guess that's what led me towards the water sector and where I am today, really. So I'd say I succeeded in some sense because I worked as an environmental geologist, and then hopefully with my PhD, I'll be able to work in the water sector of some sort. In terms of what's helped me along the path, I'd definitely say passionate teachers. So my geology teacher for my A-level was incredible. So I have a lot to thank him for. As they also supportive parents are so helpful along the way. And then hard work and determination, just self-motivation, because I think you don't always have to be the absolute cleverest, but I think if you work hard, that can go really far. In terms of obstacles, I'd say self-confidence, like the others have said, doubting yourself, especially as a woman. I think sometimes that can be hard, or somebody that has less experience in the field. also being a woman in geology, I think is difficult sometimes, and in science in general, like we've said. When I worked as a geologist, I was the only woman in the office. So I think having belief in yourself can sometimes be a challenge. Finally, what my goal is now for the future. My goal for after my PhD is to work in the water industry. So I'm not really exactly sure in what sense yet, but maybe in research or for a charity, or maybe in hydrogeology, and then hopefully using space technologies where I can. I would say, so I asked what the main difficulties are to get to that goal. I'd say completing my studies is a main obstacle. After that, competitive job markets and deciding what I actually want to do. And then I'd also say just like being taken seriously and having your ideas accepted as a woman in science. And also sometimes I think the challenges are just thinking about the enormity of the challenges that we face can be really overwhelming sometimes. But just working together to overcome those obstacles, I think, can be so rewarding. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Hannah. This was really nice, and I know Hannah for a bit now, but this was really nice to get a little bit more insight, and there's always something new to learn as well. It's very intriguing. I think one recurring theme from all the presentation have been it doesn't matter where you start off with, you can actually always steer your career in a direction that you want to, and whether it is hard work and perseverance itself that would take you there. So like Hannah mentioned, you don't have to be the most clever person, whether it is in your class or university or college itself. It's what you do with it in terms of putting the work and really wanting to get somewhere. So this is really, really encouraging itself. And thank you for sharing this insight with us as well. It's been a pleasure hearing that. And moving on to our last panelist today. So we have Alice. Alice is from our UN Spider team. Alice, feel free to share your screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Hansley. I will share. And if you can let me know that it's full screen.
Yes, I can see the screen. It's not full screen yet. Should be. Okay. Yes, all good now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. The presentations have been really interesting, and thank you to Jorge for also giving me the opportunity to contribute to this panel as well, and to the UN Youth Envoy for organising it. So I am, as Hansley said, the intern at the moment for UN Spider. Like Karina, I also have a background in geography. I studied at the University of Glasgow, and now I'm doing a master's in remote sensing and environmental mapping at UCL in London, where I'm currently based, and I'm halfway through that master's at the moment. So I'm working in remote sensing, and my first experience of this was doing an undergraduate module in remote sensing, and then I really enjoyed it, so I pursued it as my dissertation subject. So here I've just attached a picture of me doing fieldwork in the Scottish mountains, maybe just to highlight that working with space data might not be like as an engineer or at a desk, but it might also take you on very long, rainy, cold hikes as well. And here I was collecting ground truth data to validate a classification to produce a localized land cover output. So I've also attached a picture just showing examples of like working with the data. This is false color composites of Sentinel-2 data, which is like freely accessible. And you use the different bands of the sensor to try and look at the spectral patterns of the different land covers. And in terms of obstacles, I would say that like I'm still at the start of my career. Until I started with UN Spider, I would say the main obstacle I encountered was just not being able to find very many internships. I found one other remote sensing internship at a private company, a tech startup, and unfortunately I didn't get it. but yeah, just lack of internship opportunities. And as I think Hannah said, when you're at the start of your career, when you're young, you can feel quite unsure of yourself because you don't have experience. So trying to actually find those opportunities. Then again, I know that some people are very, very motivated in sending out CVs and approaching companies even when they don't have vacancies. So I think that's something that I might continue to do in the future, perhaps, and would recommend to other young people. Sorry, one moment. Sorry, Hansley, it's my laptop is being a bit glitchy. Can you see the settings?
We can see it, yes.
So right now I'm looking at UNOOSA's UN SPIDER program, and that stands for Space-Based Information for Disaster Management and Emergency Response. And our mandate as a program is to enable the use of space-based information for all phases of disaster management, so monitoring and making emergency maps and enhancing preparedness. And I've included a couple of examples of the sort of work I've been doing, which includes writing and researching on remote sensing topics such as Earth observation data cubes, which are quite a hot topic at the moment, and then producing some radar-based flood maps using Sentinel-1 data. This is an example of flooding that occurred over Namibia. And I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger either, which is why I chose to study geography, because I was interested in both human and environmental systems. So I kind of also got into remote sensing by accident. And I don't know what I'm going to do in the future, but I definitely like to carry on working in this field. And I think what I've just been learning is that there's so many possibilities. So some jobs I was always interested in included being an environmental consultant or going into urban planning. And I now know that there's lots of opportunities that you can use Earth observation data in those jobs. And then there's lots of important applications to support the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really important. And that could be through working with NGOs, international organizations, or government bodies. And then the final thing that I would really be interested in working in a role would be is like in capacity building, because that's something that my internship has now taught me a lot about, strengthening the skills of people in institutions to really be able to maximize the use of this data. So lots of uncertainties at the moment and lots of possibilities, which I'm very excited for. Thank you. I'll stop presenting as well.
Thank you, Alice. This is, I can echo there. Can you hear me? You can. Okay. Yeah. So no, thank you so much for the presentation. This is really good to know about the journey again with Alice and you, Alice, for a while already. But it's really nice to just get to know the journey that you've been through as well. And it's very interesting, as you mentioned, there are many possibilities, many uncertainties as well in terms of going forward, which kind of brings us nicely into our open discussion as well about potentially, in terms of the difficulties all of you might have faced. In terms of all the panels, I would like to first of all, thank you for sharing your backgrounds and stories with us. The journeys have been amazing because all of you could come from a different background and have kind of steered in a different background as well, in a different direction, I would say. So moving on into the open discussion and following up from what Alice might have mentioned already about the difficulties itself. So at this stage, as we're speaking, the current space industry gender ratio is around 70 to 30, so 70 men, 30% women. And I know we have touched upon that already, but in terms of the difficulties, in terms of the gender ratio, in terms of the context of the gender ratio, what do you all think? What are the main difficulties at the moment? Like you mentioned, there are some uncertainties in the past, but also in the future as well. Maybe I'll start off with Alice, if that's okay, in terms of the question.
Yeah, from what I can understand, a lot of young women would be slightly put off by entering a male-dominated sector, so that could be quite difficult for people. And I think that's where like private companies and public organizations maybe have a role in doing outreach events. I think setting up networking events for young women in the space sector or who are thinking about getting into it would be very important. And of course, also encouraging more women to study STEM subjects, maybe particularly at like a doctoral level, because I think it's sort of like at a global level, it's only a third of female PhDs. So yeah, really helping them become like young researchers and innovators from a young age.
Thank you. Maybe Hannah, I guess, which you want to comment?
I completely agree with Alice, and I think just societal stigma and like perceptions, just from such a young age, what society tells you is normal. I think that makes it really difficult for women to go into these STEM subjects and to have a lack of role models as well. So not seeing yourself reflected in future careers, and not just for women, but for other groups, maybe disabled people, non-white people, and just I think it's having more role models, people to look up to, would be really beneficial, and that's kind of a long-term change that needs to happen, I guess.
Thank you. No, I totally agree as well. And it's really nice to hear it's not just in terms of the generation we're talking about, but other groups as well that we have to make it more accessible as well. So that's really nice to highlight as well. Maybe with Moa, maybe if you wanted to add a little bit to that as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, I cannot talk directly from my perspective because I'm definitely not a woman, but I can tell you from my standpoint and from the experience of others, things that could definitely be done to help reduce, narrow down the gap. I think one of them is actively create opportunities that are targeted for women, and I can tell from the experience of one of my colleagues, for example, I think she might be in the public. She has created a rally where she teaches geospace technologies to women from vulnerable communities and rural areas in Central America, and there is a lot of interest, and that has brought up to 300 attendees to this rallies of geospace technologies, and I think that is really creating a difference of the future, right, for the future, and really creating this sense that this is actually, first of all, technology we could leverage from right now, and that it could does not, you don't need to be a PhD or you don't need to be someone hyper specialized in a specific area to really make use of this technology. And second, it is also targeting and giving opportunities to the most vulnerable communities, and in this case as well, the women population. And on the other hand, if you're creating an organization or if you're going to create opportunities, make sure you have an active speech on the importance on the gender balance. And for instance, what we're currently really focusing on the development and the creation of the Central American Aerospace Network is on this gender ratio balance and making sure we have a good representation on both ends. And we're currently at a 45-55% gender ratio balance. And that really as well changes, I mean, the message you're delivering to the world. And from an external perspective, that changes the story, right? The old story that this stuff is made only for men and it's limited to women. So I think this would be a couple of approaches I would suggest. And
thanks, Mo. No, that's really nice to hear. And I think you're right in terms of the opportunities. And this is something that UNOOSA has been doing quite a lot as well. We do have a Space for Women initiative or program at the moment, which is quietly, I mean, we do have an event coming towards the end of the, the registration closes towards the end of the month as well. I would definitely recommend all our attendees to look into this as well. But I think you're right in terms of opportunities. This is very, very much needed. It has happened in the past and it's continuously happening, but I think creating more opportunities does bring more in terms of the gender balance as well. Maybe Karina, maybe you should comment on that.
Yes, I totally agree with Alice, Hannah, and Moacir. It's professionalization for women usually came later. In Brazil, it usually is this way. And it's very important the point of Moacir, for example, that he said that his friend teaches and bring this knowledge for people don't have access. So I believe this is a very important point. We have to focus on girls mainly. We have to tell these girls that she can go for space and be an astronaut and something like that. So I believe that is a very important point also. The child, our kids, you say for them that you can go and you can do it. And so I believe this is a very important point.
I agree. I think advocacy and kind of pushing and promoting this is really important. And I think it might be Hannah who might have mentioned it, or Alice. You could tell I've already forgotten who might have mentioned this, but someone mentioned about the role models, which is really important. This is more of my personal question to all of you. Then this is just putting you on the spot. But maybe I would like to know who were your role models kind of growing up? Maybe Karina, I'll start off with you because you had few already in terms of the writers. And I'll give obviously a bit more time to think about their role models.
Yes. Yeah. Here in Brazil, we have huge geographers. I was made like natural this path of become a geographer. I wanted to be a writer, okay, but wasn't geography that I really liked. I liked what I was studying and doing because, like I said, it's an integration of all that we have. I think that geographical field is very rich, a rich field. But here in Brazil, we have many women, geographers women that are very important in the field of research. And I have someone, probably you don't know them because they study, for example, the Amazon and our Brazilian savanna formation, the Cerrado. And so this kind of models was very important for me in the beginning of my academic career. So I looked and said, okay, this is amazing. This woman studies, everything related to the Amazon, and this is amazing. And not only the environmental part, but also like I said, the social and economic spheres always related with the environment. So this integration, it's really amazing because you can understand how things works. So why we are deforesting the Amazon forest? Why we are deforesting the Cerrado? So this is very important to understand the problem and how society is related with this. So I have these models in my beginning in my studies, so this was very important.
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing this. I didn't know much. I would lie if I say I knew quite a lot already, but no, this is very impressive. And to have those role models, and it's very, very important actually, not just impressive, but it's very important to have that. I've just noticed in the chat, I think Moa might have mentioned about the rallies, and someone, Louis, who's just mentioned, I think he wrote an article on the Space for Water portal about this as well. So I could see the attendees have some background or some experience already. So maybe coming to you, Moa, in terms of your role model, who was your role model growing up?
I think I've got plenty of role models, but I would say the main one is definitely Franklin Chan. Franklin Chan is a Costa Rican astronaut, and he was a role model in the sense of daring to do things that seem impossible. He went to the US, I think, just with $500, not even speaking English, and he ended up becoming an astronaut. So that was a huge career and obstacles he faced, and that's definitely seen him fly into space and through more than 6, I think it was 7 space shuttle missions. That was very impressive, and that definitely made a difference. And well, some scientists, Richard Feynman, I think, teaching the art of questioning and curiosity. And what else? Well, more on the, I would say, philosophical end. I would say Aristotle and he's basically pretty much put up all the basis for the scientific thinking. So that's kind of a role model as well for me.
Thank you, Moa. I'm a huge school, so yes, I totally agree there. But no, having those local ones, regional ones, or national ones is very, very important. Moving on to Hannah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It made me think. I think some of my main role models, like more adventure-y people, so like women outdoor adventurers. There's a really cool woman called Anna McNuff, just so strong and like just does incredible adventures like cycling across America and like running across Australia and things. And I think not necessarily science-based, but having those people, women, showing that like other women can be outdoors and doing things that typically men do. I think that's really cool. And I'd also say like my granddad. So he was the other person in my family to go to university and do like a PhD in chemistry. And I think he was just a massive role model to me growing up. So yeah.
Thank you. No, that's very impressive to hear as well. And it's really nice to know that sometimes the role model doesn't have to be from the same field. I personally have role models in lots of different areas, but it's really nice. And to have one in the family, that's always nice as well. So yeah, that's very nice. Just moving on to Alex.
That's a difficult question. I've always tried to pinpoint one particular role model, and I can't think of one. I think the closest a role model has come to me is maybe Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, just because I think he's a fantastic writer, very entertaining, and has a lot of philosophical insight into the human condition. But in terms of somebody who really inspired me to get passionate about science, it was actually one of my lecturers at Glasgow. And the time that I really thought, wow, you're so passionate about your subject, I wish that I felt that passionate about a subject, was he was giving a lecture on his research in coastal erosion in the UK. And there was a misunderstanding, and the geology class of about 30 people all went to the wrong room, apart from 2 of us who hadn't got the email and went to the correct room. And even though there was only 2 of us, he still spent an hour enthusiastically telling us about his research. And he was so passionate about it, and that made me think, like, science is really cool and things.
That's very impressive that he actually still went along and for the lecture. But no, you could see some people very passionate about this, and it's nice having those role models, whether it's from different sectors, whether it's from within the family, or from your lecturers or your teachers. This is very important, and someone to look up to and get inspired. Moving on into a little bit more of the space sector slightly, or more the STEM field itself. I wanted to ask all of you, if possible, in terms of, we've covered this slightly already, but what were your obstacles in terms of maybe in general stuff, if it wasn't you facing it? What are the obstacles that youth currently faces in terms of the field of innovation, in particular kind of making a career in the STEM and the space field, if you had to think about it? I know some of you have different backgrounds, but if you're thinking in terms of the general field, scientific field, what are the kind of obstacles or the common ones that come along? Maybe I could start with Hannah, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I think this is an obstacle. I'd say having like not much variation in career possibilities like taught to you as a child, I would say. So I think when you're in school, when you're younger, you're taught about the main careers, being a teacher or being a doctor, but you're never really taught about those niche fields that, to be fair, most people end up in really specific areas, and you're never really taught about those. So I think that's really an obstacle, because people don't know about their opportunities, and if people knew about those more, I think they would have more varied dreams and seek those experiences and opportunities more, I would say. So I'd say that.
No, I agree. I think sometimes it is about knowing those opportunities, and then you can actually take those opportunities. So this is very, very important. It is an open question, so anyone, if you wanted to chip in and maybe answer this, if not, that's okay as well. That's fine. But I don't know. Anyone wanted to go? Maybe Moa, I guess, if you had any comments on this one. I'm not going to pick anyone, but Eddie.
Yeah, thank you, Hansley. Yeah, in terms of obstacles that you face in the field of innovation, and more in particular, the space field, well, depends on the context you were born in. But usually the case for developing countries is that we grow up with this maquiladora mentality, which basically means graduate to get a job. And usually these jobs, at least from the STEM perspective, are this kind of outsourced jobs of just assembling parts and doing repetitive tasks, right? Which doesn't usually require much innovation. So that's definitely something that kind of translates into a cultural barrier as well. And that's something that's very impregnated mentality within even the faculties in the universities. So changing that into a more innovative mindset, it's definitely one of the challenges, and that would usually require you to kind of either find your own path or find the people out there who are also interested in coming up with innovation and focusing on research and development, right? And more specifically with the space sector, well, from the standpoint of developing countries still, the space sounds like something just out of this world or impossible endeavor. That also translates into a kind of a cultural barrier that you have to deal with. And on the other hand, from an international perspective, usually space careers are constrained within a limitary national security framework of action. So that poses a big limitation, I would say, from the standpoint of someone who wants to go overseas. And yeah, that's one of the obstacles that maybe we can come up later with some solutions to in the policymakers' recommendation section.
Definitely. No, I totally agree. And yes, that would be the next question itself that kind of comes nicely. But before that, maybe I'll ask Karina and Alice any comments on this. If you had any common themes or any common obstacles that comes up in your mind directly when we're talking about youth, or any barriers itself. Maybe Karina, or if you don't have to.
Yes, I believe that inclusive Moacir said something that's really true in developing countries. So we have this kind of mindset of you study and go work immediately. So this is very a barrier to you think in an innovative way. So this is happening a lot in developing countries. It's really difficult for thinking in science and going for academic career, and so it's very difficult. So this is real.
I agree, and thanks for sharing this. It is different. Sometimes we don't realize, but the barriers are different from a developed country and developing countries as well. And we do have to take that into consideration. And of course, the policymakers, the people are higher, needs to take that into consideration as well. Maybe a last comment from Alice, if in terms of the obstacles or challenges.
I completely agree with what Hannah said. Young people choosing a career really don't have access to all of the amazing options they could do. In my case, even though I was in the geography department, I didn't really come across or get engaged with remote sensing until my third year. And if that module had filled up too fast, I never would have gotten an opportunity to do it. So yeah, really inspiring the younger generation from a young age, and specifically in the space sector, about all of the benefit areas to society that space technology can bring is important.
I totally agree. I think it's highlighting those opportunities, and hopefully with these sorts of platforms as well and sessions, hopefully it does bring up those opportunities in terms of highlighting what is out there at the moment as well. That brings us nicely to maybe the main question of today. If we all had recommendation in terms of policymakers in terms of how to get rid of those obstacles. What would it be? Right, losing my voice there, but in terms of policymakers, but also for the office. So for the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. So we wanted to know, what would your recommendations be? It could be for global policymakers or to the office itself. So maybe I could start with Karina.
Yes. So for thinking in policy, thinking in the woman condition, I don't know. I would say something like to invest in autonomy of girls. It seems it can be seems so for someone radical, but it's not. I don't know. Teach feminism at schools. That, because like I said, professionalization for women usually came later. And so I'm thinking about, in this case, women in science and in the space sector. So maybe, like I said, we have to we have to see our kids like a potential, right? So I think maybe you can, invest in this kind of policy that you bring for education, that women can be what they want to be. So I believe we must invest in this kind of policy, focus on the education. And let me think. Another that I also see some challenges related. Also, it's not my case, right? I'm not a mother, for example, but I can say that thinking the recommendations I am not a mother, like I said, but I believe that maternity support for women and men, mainly in developing countries, and because I have many friends in science field that they face huge challenges in maternity. Usually they give up of their research for take care of their kids. So I can say from Brazil, where women only have 6 months of maternity license, and their respective husband only have 5 days. So this is a real situation that we can think in the public policies related. So I think this kind of thinking in women and science and space technology, so we can think in this kind of public policies. It's really important.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And no, it's true. These are policies where, when we look at different countries, it does vary as well. So we can, of course, learn from other countries and maybe adapt to that as well. And it's worth highlighting those challenges and obstacles as well. Maybe I could ask Mer in terms of any recommendations for policy makers from his end.
Yeah, sure, Hansley. Thank you for the question as well. Well, I think that depends, right, where the policymakers are. From a national perspective, specifically, I would say, and I guess this would be the case for still developing countries, putting up the case here for developing countries. It's a focus on developing innovation, entrepreneurship, and research capacities from within the country itself. And not only focus on attracting external investment or external companies into our countries, right? So that that's important. That brings career opportunities, job opportunities, but it is not a long-term solution, right? Depending on the outsourcing of specific engineering activities and tasks of multinational companies that come to our countries to provide careers. So really focus on developing capacities from within in terms of research and development, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And in terms of international policymakers, such as the case for UNOOSA, well, it's hard to tell specifically what UNOOSA could do better, at least from my standpoint, given that I have truly seen the fruits and benefits of UNOOSA's work and tasks worldwide. But maybe something that we could still focus on or continue focusing on is strengthening these relationships between UNOOSA and important political institutions related to the science and STEM fields in each country, right? So I understand UNOOSA has a good relationship, at least with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Costa Rica. But I'm quite uncertain about what that relationship is between other more science-related or technology-related institutions in the country. So maybe that's a point we could focus on moving on in the future.
Thank you, sir. I was trying to unmute myself. I couldn't unmute myself for some reason, but no, thank you for sharing this. And I totally agree. I think the framework, building that framework is very important. And of course, thanks for sharing the suggestions for the office as well, in terms of those collaboration and support for different member states or different countries itself. I guess this is very important, and definitely it will be a good suggestion for the team to take away as well. So if I may, I could ask Alice in terms of any recommendations from her side.
Yeah, I think UNOOSA is doing really important work with the Space for Youth competition, engaging younger people to share their ideas and shape space policy, and then also with the Space for Women project as well. And it's definitely important to showcase the work of females in leadership roles, including the director of UNOOSA, Simonetta Di Popo, who's an astrophysicist by background. That's a very important work. One suggestion I would have is internship opportunities at UNOOSA have become remote due to COVID, but I truly believe that continuing to allow them to be undertaken remotely will really facilitate more people to be able to do them. So I think that's quite important. Maybe as well carry on promoting learning opportunities as well. There's so many online courses, virtual trainings, and like massive open online courses, MOOCs, which are really good for getting people involved, even if they don't come from a technical background and want to change careers. And then finally, maybe supporting grassroots organizations in other countries. I've heard of some efforts in developing countries, sort of like organizations of like female-led, of engineers, aerospace engineers going to schools and providing the female role models as we were talking about. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and I agree. I think in the chat itself, I could see there were a few questions about the internship and accessibility, and having that remote definitely helps. And like you mentioned, also with organizing events such as these ones, opportunities, it definitely helps as well. And I'm really glad, and like I said initially as well, thank you all for participating in this, because, you know, sharing those experiences definitely help. And you could tell so many questions are coming in as well, which is really, really good. In terms of maybe the last comment from Hannah, if I may ask.
Yeah, of course. I agree with what Karina was saying earlier about really actively encouraging women to go into STEM, so not being complacent and letting that slide, but really being active in that field, and encouraging that from an early age. Like we were saying before, showing children many science opportunities and their role models. I'd also say having more scholarships in STEM subjects for less privileged groups would be really beneficial. And I think a lot of the time there's a big focus on going to university for science subjects, and obviously a lot of the time going to university is really is necessary for science, but I think with some engineering you can go through different routes, like apprenticeships, and university isn't for everyone. So I think pushing people less to go to university if they're not set up for it, but proving and showing that you can still get into science in different ways is really important. Specifically for UNOOSA, I think similar to what Mo was saying, kind of linking stakeholders with young people more is really beneficial, so that stakeholders can like show to young people their experiences and their knowledge, and try to encourage them into the space sector, and also for them just to work on changing perceptions and societal norms. I think in schools and in educations and in workplaces is really important for UNOOSA to do, and just to continue kind of working closely with developing countries in access to space for all, and continue to diversify the workplace, and yeah, like Alice said, just to continue their really good work. Yeah, thank you.
thank you. I mean, you've really summed up everything in terms of the potential recommendations as well, which is really nice. And I totally agree. I think it is about, making sure we are always having these conversations, which is very important. And I could, just looking at the chat itself quickly, I know there were so many questions that came in, and we've covered them throughout those conversations itself in terms of what kind of strategies to follow, how beneficial it would be in terms of the early exposure to science or STEM education itself, but also in terms of collaborations as well. So within all the conversations we've had today, it has already covered that. So I know I'm just conscious of the time, so I won't be able to take all these questions itself. But what I would like to do, I would like to first of all thank all our panelists once again for their remarks, sharing their experiences, also their journey. I think that's been the most important part of this session, is to hear about the journey from the start till the end, and also the amazing work they all are doing at the moment. Just to let everyone know, this spotlight session is pivotal in terms of the next stage, where all the recommendations, all the discussions that we've had today will be shared and presented to the Secretary General Office for the Youth Envoy. So all these conversations are very, very important. And also, I would have to mention the work and celebration of youth does not end here. It is very important for us to recognize that young people are continuously helping in terms of many areas, not just in terms of the space for youth itself, but also in terms of global challenges, poverty reduction, healthcare, social inclusion, climate change, and many others. So it is very important for that to be recognized itself on the global level. So the contribution of youth must always be valued, and I believe personally only with inclusive support mechanism we can all hopefully move forward collectively and individually restore our talent. I would like to thank once again all our attendees and all our panelists, and of course I would like to wish you all a happy International Youth Day. And with this, I guess the session ends today, but of course the conversation can keep on going as well, and we'll have more opportunities in the future from UNOOSA and the office as well. Thank you once again.